the Canadian Virtual CPA PD Day. We have about half an hour left in the event. Just seeing people coming on to the main stage here to join us on the platform. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. Really happy to be joined here by a great panel. We got lots to cover. I'm a CPA, CA as well, legacy CA side. We got a great panel of CPAs here as well. And I'm going to introduce one by one. And again, for those of you watching, hope you've been enjoying today. A lot of great sessions. I've been out networking, had a chance to see a couple of great sessions as well. So lots of good stuff happening today. We've got about half an hour left. So clockwise on my screen, Lana Morgan is first up. And Lana is CPA, CMA, Director of Finance and Accounting and Reporting at Canadian Credit Union Association. Lana, thanks very much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Lana, maybe talk a little bit about yourself, what you do, a little bit about your role, and your maybe something about being a CPA. What does it mean to you?
Well, I'm just going to start with the magic letter CPA. So CPA, it's a very honored designation, and I hold it with honor. And I've been in a finance and accounting team, not because of the CPA, but in general for over 17 years. But CPA actually does contribute to your knowledge, does contribute to your leadership skills. So I'm very, fortunate to be a CPA.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being on here. Robert Phillips is next clockwise on my screen, CPA, CMA, Senior Director of Finance and Operations at Cengage, Canada. Thanks very much for being on here, Robert. Maybe you as well, same thing, if you can give the audience an idea as to your background, what you do, and what it means to be a CPA real quick.
Sure, and hi everybody. Thanks for the opportunity, Marc. Great to be here and great to speak to everybody. It's different doing this digitally, but it's fun. Yeah, so I'm the head of finance for Cengage Canada. Cengage is one of the world's largest book publishers, higher education organizations. Think McGraw-Hill or Pearson, Nelson, organizations like that. And we've been new to Canada since July of this year. So 100% digital. We don't even have an office. Hired a whole team virtually, and it's just been fascinating to kind of go through pandemic in that world. When I think about being a CPA, I think about being a trusted advisor. We've invested in our education and our continuing education to make sure that we can give advice when we're looking at making decisions, acquisitions, whether to invest in a new product or a new service, and then making sure that people have the right information, they can trust it. So I focus on being a good partner to the business and helping them make the right decision.
Excellent. Great having you here. Sonia Orchant is CPA, CA, FCA, Vice President Finance at Anova, Fertility and Reproductive Health. Thanks very much for being here, Sonia. Same thing. Maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do, what your organization's about.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, first of all. I'm excited, and I will actually admit this is my first panel. So it's a new experience and in a new format. I work in the fertility space. So the company I work for is actually a group of small fertility clinics across the GTA and growing. Particularly over the last year and a half, I guess, as COVID has been going through, we've been undergoing some serious change in terms of how we do business, how we continue to sustain our existing base and grow from there. And my role is really interesting in that the traditional accounting is obviously the fundamentals that we've all been trained and skilled up for and hopefully are quite passionate about. But I'm going to echo what Robert said. Being the business partner is actually probably the bigger part of what I do, be it from legal aspects, transaction aspects, getting involved in the overall hiring, staffing of the business, those sorts of things. So it's always something different every day, which is motivating and inspiring. And I'm grateful for the education that I've had over the years to be able to use that as a platform for that and feel comfortable and confident then extending into areas that I hadn't previously touched in earlier points in my career.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being on. And Daniel Steinfeld is CPA co-founder on the Block Realty. So Daniel, you made a pivot in your career as well. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and where you're at now?
Sure. Yeah. So again, thanks for having me as well. So I'm co-founder of On the Block Realty. We're a boutique brokerage and also an auction platform, which is the first of its kind in Canada that actually is bringing open bidding, which a lot of people talk about in real estate. Discussion for another day, but the tech side of things is something that we're really focused on there. But like you said, it was a big pivot from initially being in practice in accounting and then running the finance for a professional football team in the city for the Toronto Argonauts for about 8 years, which was when we met years ago. And yeah, it's the nice thing, really, I guess that ties into your initial question about the CPA, really gives you versatility and opportunity to stretch to all sorts of different areas from basic finance, and I use basic just, sort of fundamental finance, to entrepreneurship, to all sorts of different sides of a business. And there's nothing else like it to be able to really learn everything there is to know about business in general and apply it in all sorts of different ways.
Very much so. Yeah, very good points. So coming back to Lana, Lana, you were talking earlier about converting and the issues that you've had in the last year about converting from paper to paperless. Maybe talk about the issues, what you've learned, maybe some tips that you can share with people watching.
Sure, absolutely. So 2020 was definitely an interesting year, where one day we were just had to go home and start working from home all the time, which for some people was challenging. However, 2020 actually showed such a resilience, such a flexibility in the people, especially in my team, where before March 16 or whatever the day we were sent home, we were running on a paper base, and all of a sudden we had to learn how to become virtual and store everything on the storage. So but my team, especially the Canadian Credit Union Association, my finance team, they've done an absolutely fantastic job listening, learning Excel as much as they could, as fast as they could, showing the interest. And if, for example, before it was a challenge to kind of stop people printing, actually later on, usage of the Excel, usage of other software, other platforms actually got people extremely excited. And what it showed to me is that now we're moving into a training base of like more advanced Excel, whereas before it was, very basic skills. Yes, we know how to open the Excel. Now we're learning pivot tables and macros. And this happened over the course of the year. So the specifically in my finance team, I think the most important things that we learned, and I learned as a director of the finance team, is first of all, you have to listen to people. You have to listen to their needs and their challenges, and you have to act very fast to adjust. So listening is a very key that helps you progress as a leader and actually move your team to a very, very solid base. And not only just to move a specific phase or place, it actually helps you to see the full potential in your people, whereas before you could think that a particular person couldn't, do something, but it's because its inability to maybe listen. So it actually taught me a lot about how you should listen to people and how you should act on those needs. And if you do that, that brings you to a very, very strong team. And it actually helps the organization to progress faster, save a lot of money, look into the opportunity for further collaboration, and it leads all to the great outcomes. That was my experience through 2020.
Excellent. Well, great. Thanks for sharing. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm moderating the panel this afternoon. Daniel Steinfeld is CPA co-founder on the block Realty. Lana Morgan is CPA CMA Director of Finance, Accounting and Reporting at Canadian Credit Union Association. Sonia Orchant is CPA CA FCA Vice President of Finance at Anova Fertility and Reproductive Health. And Robert Phillips is CPA CMA Senior Director of Finance and Operations at Cengage Canada. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, put them in the event or in the stage chat on the right-hand side. Happy to moderate as the afternoon goes on. So Daniel, some of the words that you used also earlier, resiliency, perseverance, looking forward. Maybe talk a little bit about that and how that's become more important through the pandemic and over the last year.
Absolutely. I mean, now more than ever, I think everyone can agree that we're in as unique a time as anybody has ever lived. And for virtually everybody, it's more difficult than it was before this whole situation started in one way or another. Notwithstanding whether it's difficult or not, I think it's unique and different from what people had grown used to. And I think everybody can choose what path they take when confronted with a tough situation. And it's really easy to bury your head in the sand and say, this is hard, and therefore call me when it's over, right? Whereas I think a lot of people just need to look for not necessarily the good and the bad, but there is a glass half full approach to this. The way Lana was talking about adaptability and the way that you can, grow your business into using different things, sometimes because you're forced to, sometimes because it's actually a good idea and now's the best time to do it. In our business, we built an office in November of 2019 or 2020, right before this all started, which is the worst time to build a bricks and mortar office. But from there, it's still running. Nobody's there and we're paying for it. But we've built virtual environments and we've got 16, 17 staff who are all operating virtually. And we've created all these online communities that make things work for us. I've got 4 kids above me right now as I'm talking to you who understand that these sorts of things happen and they can't eat up the bandwidth, like things happen. And Sonia, it's amazing you're here because my wife is actually a surrogate due any minute right now as well. So
amazing.
So it's possible I might have to run. But all that being said, there's so many different curveballs that get thrown at us. The pandemic is as big a curveball as it can be. However, we choose what we do with that. And if you're able to define your goals, don't make them too big, and really celebrate the small victories along the way, set little benchmarks for yourself as you go. That's what's worked for us. You're not always focused on hitting the home run. It's just a walk and a single and don't strike out, and it's like, I know everyone says we're going to get through this, and it's true. We will get through this, despite the fact that Mr. Ford, I think, just shut us down for another month. It is what it is. But with that comes the opportunity that flows from that. How do we use that month to actually move forward instead of stay paused? So for me, that's a collection of different isms that hopefully lead to a conclusion that people can find for themselves as they figure out what to do with their time during a tough time.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's a wide open field, and you can kind of rebuild and restructure in many different ways depending on what the situation is. Robert, you talked about how to be a partner in the company when you can't meet people face to face, and that you've had to hire people, or not had to, but you've hired people and you haven't met them. You haven't seen them. You have a boss in Boston, I think you said. So maybe talk a little bit about those relationships. How someone else like watching, maybe some tips that you could share of what that has meant over the last year and what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting time. To give a tiny bit of background, Cengage is a $1.5 billion global company, but in Canada, we're brand new. So we started in July of this past year. So literally in the middle of first wave or middle of pandemic. And that's presented a really interesting opportunity to try and hire people and build relationships in a 100% remote environment. I find it requires a lot of intention, right? When you're in a physical space, it's easy to just have, drive-by conversations. How's your weekend? Oh, hey, jump into this meeting and let's get your opinion. It's just easier because it's habit, right? For all of us, however long we've been working, it's just our ways of working. Whereas in this world, it requires a little bit more intention to think through, am I inviting not just the core group of people, but some other people who I'd like to get to collaborate or get their opinions on this? Or am I actually creating opportunities to sit down and talk to people that maybe otherwise I wouldn't meet? So we've got something like Coffee Friday, where we just invite everybody together. This Friday, we're talking about your favorite sports team. And it sounds silly, but it's an informal, fun way to actually talk about things outside of work, build a little bit more of a relationship, even though we have never physically met in person. And I think outside of the finance role in an organization, it really requires being a trusted partner and trusted advisor and building that relationship. So how you can intentionally get to know people in the business, get to know what challenges they're facing, what struggles they're having, and how you can add value to them. Not how you can add value to yourself. Rather than focusing inwards on my forecasting process or my budgeting process, how can I help solve some of the problems the business is facing? If they need to cut back, how can I figure out what they should prioritize and where the first things to cut could come from? If they're making a tough investment because they don't have as much money to invest, how can I help them figure out the best return on that investment? So I've tried to focus less on my finance processes and more on where I can add value to solving the problems that they're facing in the pandemic. And it may feel a little bit more tactical, a little bit more, just flying by the seat of your pants rather than the rigid finance processes we've typically had. But as Daniel said, right, it's unprecedented, new times. We need to be a bit flexible, but resilient and kind of focus on helping drive the business rather than just sticking to our normal standard finance ways of doing things.
Great advice. Sonia, what have you learned about yourself in the last year?
Good question. I would say that I was actually very comfortable in the space that Robert just described. The water cooler conversations, the getting to know folks, just passing by and you exchange ideas and you operate in that way. So taking a lot of that sort of group feedback, thoughts, the presence that you bring to a conversation so that you can find out or you can visually see what others' needs may be within the business, or even on a personal level, to suddenly having to adapt overnight. So initially I actually worked in a team in another essential services sector that were present. They then were sent home, but I had to engage with them as a very junior team. They were used to a lot of support coming by my desk, every 5 minutes. So switching our channels to making sure that the group chat was always on, that people were always talking to each other, that somebody was checking in and making sure that, they felt that they had other people to count on and also just chat with, because suddenly it can be a little bit isolating for especially the folks that are a bit introverted. And accounting occasionally does attract the odd quieter type. So moving into a new organization about 6 months ago, I didn't have the in-person, I can take you guys out for lunch, we can spend some time together, do some group socials, things like that. How do you get to know your team? And I spent my first few months more with virtual one-on-ones, one-on-twos, one-on-threes, just gradually increasing the conversation so that there was a comfort level, but also I'm invested in your career. I'm invested in what you're doing. I want to spend the time getting to know you and what you're able to do professionally. And it's funny, when I started, we actually didn't have any channels. So the IT was a little bit more rudimentary than it is today. We didn't have things like Microsoft Teams up and running. And so the team were emailing one another and then responding within a 2, 3, 4 hour time frame, which is okay. But we're so used to dialogue that's across the wall or down the hall type thing that's relatively instant. So getting some of those other channels in, getting, a WhatsApp group going more for social things that are happening, who's baking this weekend, that kind of stuff, so that we've got a few avenues for people to build and foster those relationships. And I'd gone from I will be honest, a fairly traditional mindset, because previously in the last 15 years of my career, you're there, you're present, you have to be there to show that you're actually contributing in a lot of roles as you go through, to understanding that you can support this and people will certainly reward you with loyalty if you support them properly as well. So that's been a great learning for me.
Terrific. Daniel, you've made a career change. I mean, you're not your traditional accountant, right? So maybe talk about, maybe what you like, any tips that you would want to share with other people who have already made a career change, or maybe are thinking about making a career change. What should they be thinking about? What are some thoughts that you went through your mind when you were making a bit of a change?
Good question. I think it does depend where you're at in your life and what your risk tolerance is to some degree. So if I'm going to use kind of CPA terminology, like you do want to do a little bit of an assessment of where you're at and a bit of a cost benefit analysis of the decisions you might be making. Now, for me, I'm a real proponent of, if you don't try it, you'll never know. I like to establish the worst case scenario. And if that's not completely unbearable, then it's worth giving a shot. I can honestly say that every opportunity that I've had to this point has been a function of stepping out of my comfort zone. I wouldn't have landed with the Argos had I not made relationships earlier in my career and even during my education. The same way that I wouldn't be in real estate now or in an entrepreneur space if it weren't for a lot of the things that I learned even when I was with the Argos. In between, I stepped out on my own and did something that sort of bridged the two. But in every case, you've got to feel a little bit nervous, but it's a good kind of nervous. And if you keep your finger on some sort of a safety valve at all times, I'd say, I mean, my opinion is go for it. Like, that's the lesson that I will give to people. And like I said, be aware of your worst case scenario, but understand that if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got. And that's okay. For like, there's lots of people who are very happy doing what they do, and it's a life of doing that. For me, I'm a bit of a drifter or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm kind of just taking experiences as they come, and I don't think I'll be in this space 5-10 years from now. Maybe I will, but I think for everybody, keep an ear to the ground, and having a CPA, like we said, it gives you that versatility and knowledge that goes beyond just debits and credits. So be aware of that, keep learning, keep asking questions, keep meeting people, virtual or not, because every relationship, even if it doesn't seem like it's valuable at the time, can come back to you 5-10 years later.
Excellent advice. So open question to anybody on the panel, and that is, share, if you can share one thing that's contributed to the success of your career. You've each been successful in your careers. You've each attained a level of seniority in your businesses, your organizations. What along the way has contributed? Was it somebody? Was it something somebody said? A course that you took? Share something that somebody watching can take away and say, "Wow, man, if only." Right? Is there something that stands out in your careers?
I
Robert?
could actually share.
Lana? Anybody? Sonia, go ahead. Anybody?
Sonia, go ahead.
I will be brief. I was lucky to find a couple of good mentors along the way, individuals that I could look up to and aspire and learn from, that gave me ideas beyond the scope of what my day-to-day was, and to reach for the next thing, and continually look upwards, because at the end of the day, if they could do it and they could coach it, there was opportunity for me. So I met some really good people, and across the years, that gave me skills in different areas and confidence to grow, which has contributed to where I've gotten to so far today.
Terrific. And Lana? Thanks, Sonia. Lana?
Thank you so much, Marc. So I just want to share one of the thoughts that I came across through my career path. Just one of the things that I learned about myself, and I think this is not the advice for everybody, but some people might find it valuable. Do not ever think that you are not as good as you are. Always believe in yourself and knock the doors. They're going to open. Do not listen to people who tells you things that might bring you down. This is never about you. It's about somebody else. So my personal advice to everybody, I know it's tough. I know it's difficult. It's a lot of competition, but at the same time, every single person that you meet on your way gives you a lesson, good, bad. Always learn from it. Never get angry. Just push yourself, and you're just going to be at the place where you should be. This is my advice that I learned.
That's great, Lana. And what about if anybody wants to open up to any mistakes that they made that they regret, and that you do a redo if you could, something that was detrimental to your career, or a mistake that you learned from that you're happy to share, you're okay to share?
Really put us on the spot there, Marc. I don't think anybody was. This wasn't in the prepared questions. Come on.
I want people to take things away and kind of go, you know what? That was great. That was inspiring.
I'll be vulnerable. Okay, that's fine.
All right. There's always one, right?
I think when I spoke about being a partner to the business, I think it probably comes from early on in my career, not collaborating enough and not engaging with the business enough. When you're in a junior finance role, you're trying to prove yourself. You're trying to prove that, you've got the numbers right and you can do your slides and, present your reports. And sometimes, maybe it's just me, but maybe this happens to other people, you don't collaborate enough with people out in the business. You don't engage them maybe early on in the process to say, hey, what's working for you? Like, how is the monthly forecasting process? Is it super frustrating? Do the templates not make sense? Does it actually add any value? No, you just keep doing what you're doing and you assume that you're doing it right. Or you don't spend enough time to get to know the business. And I've definitely done that. I didn't spend enough time to build the relationship and to actually understand the fundamentals of how that division or that group is working. And then all of a sudden, you go into a meeting and you make some, hey, my recommendation is X, and sure enough, you had no idea what you were talking about. So I think that's what's led me to collaborate a little bit more and really think of myself as a partner and advisor. But to do that, you have to work together and really invest in that, in building that relationship and getting to know whoever you're supporting.
Awesome. Anyone else want to talk about it? Hey, I've made lots of mistakes in my life, so
sure. I'll jump in. Yeah. I think for me, it's almost a theme of a mistake I was making for a long time that manifested itself in all sorts of different bad outcomes that I've since learned from. And really, it comes down to and I did, like, being something that you're not, or stepping outside of what actually is authentically who you are and trying to say the things people want to hear to get yourself ahead. It doesn't work. I mean, it may work short term, and even if it does, it's going to feel like junk even when you get there. And then you've got either, like, think of the sitcoms where somebody gets caught in a lie and then at some point it comes out. Like, I'm not saying so much lying, but just from an enjoyment of your career and your life, staying authentic, being vulnerable. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay when you don't know the answer, because people actually appreciate that. And you've probably heard the cliche of, like, if everyone's just waiting for someone to say they don't know the answer, because no one in the room knows the answer, right? So for too long, I was the one who always needed the right answer and was always answering questions and talking, expletive. So let's just say that I've since become a lot more myself in all the business and relationships that I have, and it's really gone a long way in my own comfort level, but even just in furthering my business and relationships as well.
Excellent. Great advice from all of you. We just have a couple of minutes left. I just have some concluding remarks, but I want to thank you, each of you, for really sharing and opening up. Just to remind everybody who the panelists were: Danielle Steinfeld, CPA co-founder on the block Realty; Lana Morgan, CPA CMA Director of Finance, Accounting and Reporting at Canadian Credit Union Association; Sonia Orchant, CPA CA FCA Vice President of Finance at Anova Fertility and Reproductive Health; and Robert Phillips, CPA CMA Senior Director of Finance and Operations at Cengage Canada. I just want to share that Aaron posted in the chat about how the whole panel would make excellent mentors. So kudos to each of you as well for sharing your advice. And if there's one thing that I've learned over the years in business, that you can't underestimate the power of networking and your network. It can open up so many doors and make so many connections. And invariably, CPAs, and you don't go through a course of networking when you go through school and everything else, but I learned a lot of skills and learn a lot by networking. And it is amazing how many doors it actually opens for you. And CPAs aren't always the greatest about networking and making contacts and opening up, and they do their job a lot and they go in and they do great, but the power of the networking side of it is amazing. So really important for people to know that and to continue with that. But want to thank TorontoJobs.ca and the team for putting today's event on, TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca, and also the event has been powered by Event Logic with a K.ca. My name again, Marc Belaiche, President of TorontoJobs.ca. Let us know how you liked the event or how you didn't. We'll send you a survey in the next 24 hours. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, so that we can get better next time as well. TorontoJobs.ca, if you have any staffing needs, if you're looking for a job, feel free to reach out. You can connect with myself. You can also email sales@TorontoJobs.ca if you're looking to fill a position. TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca, if you're a business owner, you're looking to network, you can check out some of the upcoming events there as well. And EventLogic.ca, if there's an event that you'd like to have put on, like the CPA conference today or another event, you can certainly visit the website as well. Again, eventlogic.ca. And if you'd like to have your company highlighted or services highlighted, we have speaker, sponsor, and exhibitor options available for all the events that we're doing. We're running 13 or 14 events a month right now. So please reach out to me if you'd like, or check out eventlogic.ca. And other upcoming events, tomorrow, Thursday, April 8th, we have best practices for recruiting staff in 2021. I put the link on the right-hand side that you can check out. How to grow your career in public accounting is happening on Wednesday, April 28th. Tuesday, May 11th is the Canadian CFO conference. Again, all of these events I've put in the side in the chat, so you can check it out. The Canadian Virtual Tax Conference happens on Friday, May 28th. The next Canadian Virtual CPA PD Day will be on Wednesday, June 9th. And the CPA Firm Partners Conference happens on Tuesday, June 15th. So don't forget what I just said about networking and the power and so on. I've also put on in the chat on the event side a lot of links to a number of social media pages that we have specifically for finance and accounting professionals. There's a link for there's 2 links for Facebook, one for Twitter, one for Instagram, and a couple for LinkedIn as well, including the Toronto Chartered Professional Accountants Group, the Halton Peel CPA Ontario Association Group that I'm board member of as well. And I've also included my LinkedIn connection as well. So feel free to connect with me, with anybody on the panel as well. I want to thank all the speakers, the team. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that put this on. Sarah, Sandra, Rachel, Ann, Jesse, Alex. I want to thank the sponsors and exhibitors, the panelists, the attendees. We do tack on another 10 minutes at the end of the event, so you still have some time to network through our speed networking. You can visit our expo as well. And I want to thank you for being on, watching panel. Again, thank you very much. And thank you and have a great day. And everybody stay safe through what we're going through. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.